More than 30 years ago, a little boy was repeatedly molested here in South Bend, and now his abuser has been sent to prison. 16 News now had a camera in the courtroom for the sentencing hearing. That's something that hasn't happened here at WNDU in St. Joseph County in years. Our Caroline Clapp brings us part one of her exclusive 16 News Now I-Team exclusive of Victim No More. Caroline, tell us about it.
Josh and Lauren, Judge Sanford approved my request to have a camera at the sentencing hearing for Alan Tomacheski last week. That's when Brandon Rogers had a chance to look his abuser in the eye when he addressed the court. Rogers' story may be upsetting as it's about child sexual abuse, but he hopes it brings comfort to other survivors out there.
You do not even classify as a human. You are insignificant, a rapist, a child molester. You are nothing.
Powerful words delivered straight to the face of his abuser.
On that same floor, in that same double-wide trailer.
43-year-old Brandon Rogers never thought he would see this day in court.
Out of respect for the court, I will watch my mouth, but I refuse to bite my tongue.
A day 32 years in the making. Rogers grew up in Florida, but came to South Bend during the summers as a child after his mother divorced Alan Tomacheski.
We'd spend the summer, and then at the end of every summer, he would take us on this big, huge, extravagant vacation, going to Cedar Point, Dollywood, the Grand Canyon, and drop us, my brother and I, back off at home like, here you go, and, you know, and that's how it happened.
What happened is what Rogers remembers as years of repeated sexual molestation. As a child, the first time this started, you didn't really know what was going on, did you?
I didn't understand. It's, you know, I was a child, but, and I was confused, but after a couple years, I didn't need to be told. I just knew what was going on was wrong. But I was so scared to come forward because God forbid, you know, if no one believed my story and to be sent back up here, you know, I was scared to death.
Rogers also spent those summers in South Bend with his half-brother. But when Rogers was around the age of 12, his mother told him the man he thought was his father was really his former stepdad.
I actually came up here one more summer after I found out, because I felt like I had to come up here and let it happen to me to protect my brother. And the last summer I was here, I came to the conclusion that my brother's old enough, and I know there was no chance that it would happen to him. And then I sort of thought, well, he was probably just doing this because I wasn't actually his son.
So it did not happen to your brother?
No, absolutely not. Thank God.
Rogers says from there, he tried to move on with his life, but the trauma of the abuse never left him.
Whether it's been a second, an hour, or the whole day, I've thought about this every single day of my life.
Rogers says the abuse started in the late 80s. 32 years later, he decided to speak out.
And the more I started to talk about it, I started to feel better. And then, as I sat there and got more comfortable talking about it, I was like, you know, this feels great that I no longer have to keep this secret. And then I started to think, well, he's alive up here. If I don't have to keep this secret, what gives him the right to keep this secret?
And in part two, you'll find out how prosecutors were able to charge Tomacheski all these years later. That's straight ahead at 5.
You talk about the fact that you were able to bring a camera into that courtroom, something that does not happen often.
That was a first for me as a reporter.
Talk about that process.
Well, I submitted that request over a month ago to Judge Sanford, and the morning of, I got a response back, and he said, you can come on in with the camera. So.
To hear those words.
I'm so glad you did, because it was so powerful to hear him address his abuser for the first time like that.
And he wanted you at home to be able to hear that story. So I'm glad Judge Sanford approved that request as well.
Part two coming up in just under an hour. Caroline, we appreciate the reporting.
A case unlike anything I've seen before. That's how a detective with the Special Victims Unit in St. Joseph County described the case that came to him last October. And last week in a courtroom, a now 43-year-old man got to address the predator who abused him. 16 News Now's Caroline Clapp had a camera in the courtroom to capture it all. Caroline.
George, this case is significant for several reasons. WNDU hasn't brought a camera into the courtroom in St. Joseph County in years. Brandon Rogers wanted his story to be heard, and a judge granted my request. Now, this case also had passed Indiana's statute of limitations, but something happened that most people would not expect.
The more I thought of it, I see this dark shadow in the background. And I'm like, I started to feel guilty that I'm able to talk about this when there could be other innocent children, you know, in danger.
After more than 30 years of holding a horrible secret to his chest, Brandon Rogers made a choice to report how his former stepfather sexually abused him as a child. Rogers made a call to the South Bend Police Department, and the case eventually made its way to Special Victims Unit Detective Trent Mamazza.
Initially, when we got this report, we didn't even know if we were going to be able to investigate it because, you know, it happened like over 32 years ago.
Brandon Rogers tells me this is where the abuse happened, in this trailer behind me, every summer when he was a young boy.
You only cared about yourself when you were stripping that child from his innocence.
Brandon Rogers drove all the way from South Florida with his half-brother by his side to give not a victim impact statement, but what he calls a victory lap speech.
I do not stand here today a victim. I stand here a man that couldn't care less what happens to you. Every night in that trailer, that child would always complain of how hot it was and use that as an excuse to sleep next to the AC vent, which came from the floor. When in fact, this was just the farthest spot from the bottom bunk of the bunk beds you had. The child's brother sleeping safely on the top bunk, while the child hoping he was far enough away from the parasitic predator's reach that was feeding off his innocence. I wish I could tell you that the child was out of his reach. Sadly, he never was.
Detective Mamazza went to his trailer last October.
I walked up to the trailer, knocked on the door, you know, made sure that it was Alan, told him that there were some allegations made and that, you know, I'd like to talk to him about these allegations.
Detective Mamazza says Tomaszewski came to the Special Victims Unit office in South Bend soon after, and he says it didn't take too long for him to confess.
Initially, you know, he denied the allegations, but then as I talked to him a little bit longer, he started opening up a little bit more, went into detail about some of the stuff that he had done to Brandon when he was a little kid. There was several people watching the interview and prosecutor and stuff, and we were all surprised that, you know, he had confessed to all this.
Are you shocked that he did admit to it?
I couldn't believe it. He actually was willing to admit to doing it the first year I came up and the last year I came up.
What makes this case so rare is that it had passed Indiana's statute of limitations, meaning the only way prosecutors could charge Tomaszewski is with a confession. If that day when you went and knocked on his trailer for that first time, if he had said, "Get off my property, I don't want to talk to you," what would have happened?
The case would have been basically closed. In my career, I haven't seen anything like this.
Detective Mamazza says when they got the arrest warrant, they came straight to Tomaszewski's trailer, and Mamazza says that he came willingly.
Whether he passes in prison or not, he's a waste of life. He's dead to the world already, so it doesn't matter.
Rogers says he has already found his peace in life.
I was blessed with having a wife and a stepchild, you know, and my God, I couldn't imagine letting anyone or myself harm my child, you know. Having that done to me, oh my God, how could I possibly ever put someone else through that, you know?
He has this message for other survivors of sexual abuse.
It's okay to come forward. Don't be scared. I mean, look at me. I don't think I look like the typical victim. It can happen to anyone because I know what it's like to feel hopeless in your life. And I know it may seem rough, but I promise everyone and anyone, if they meet the right people, surround themselves with love, and do the right thing, good things will start to happen, and you can overcome anything.
As for Tomaszewski, he took a plea deal, pleading guilty to 2 counts of child molestation. He got 10 years for each count. But Detective Amaza tells me with good behavior, he may only end up serving 10 years for the good behavior credit. He is still in the St. Joseph County Jail awaiting transfer to the Indiana Department of Corrections. If you missed part 1, you can catch that on WNDU.com along with Brandon's full speech.